It feels like my wife is being disrespectful to me. It seems like, man, this is really crossing a line, but she's saying that I'm too sensitive. She's basically putting it back on me. Is she disrespecting me? Is this something that I should stand up for? I've heard this word emasculation out there. What does that mean? Is she emasculating me? What do I do about this? A man in our private membership group asked me this question, and this has been very popular on YouTube with videos lately. And this man wanted Cynthia's feedback and for me to address this here on the C Note Show. So, welcome to the C Note Show, gentlemen, with myself and Cynthia Cruz. We are here to teach about long-term monogamous relationship, where you want deep sex and you want deep soul connection. She would love to have your safety, inspiration, and sexual leadership. And you want to know how to avoid mistakes or solve marriage problems. And that's what Cynthia and I are here to teach again today. So, what are three ways wives disrespect and emasculate their husband? Well, one man also asked, what is a nice guy? So, Dr. Robert Glover, in his book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, this is an excerpt from the book. Who are these men? What is a nice guy? They all believe that if they are good and do everything right, they will be loved, get their needs met, and have a problem free life. This attempt to be good typically involves trying to eliminate or hide certain things about themselves, their mistakes, their needs, their emotions, and become what they believe others want them to be, which they believe others want them to be generous, helpful, peaceful. And they think that if they do all these things, if they're good and they do them all perfectly, then they will get love, that they deserve to have their needs met, and they'll have a problem-free life. He says, I call these men nice guys. Now, life isn't fair, and you might do all of these things, but the resentment that not getting a problem free life, not having their needs automatically met, makes nice guys, and I can relate to this, start to question and become resentful and angry of why they're giving, and it seems as though it feels like they're being taken advantage of. That's a place where many men begin in this work. And Dr. Robert Glover also says, this is from the book, a nice guy is the relative who lets his wife run the show. He's the buddy who will do anything for anyone, but whose own life seems to be in shambles. He's the guy who frustrates his wife or girlfriend because he's so afraid of conflict that nothing ever gets resolved. He's the boss who tells one person what they want to hear, then reverses himself to please someone else. He's the man who lets people walk all over him because he doesn't want to rock the boat. He's the dependable guy at church or the club where he will never say no and would never tell anyone if they were imposing on him. He's the man whose life seems so under control until, boom, one day he does something to destroy it all, it seems as though. So, this is a theme within nice guys, men, good men who are trying to do well with their wife. They want her to be happy. And so, what's this word emasculate mean? Well, as of the dictionary, it means to deprive a man of his role or his identity, his male identity. And it also is to castrate a man, right? To move the antlers from him, or a flower as well. So to castrate him, a man or a male animal. Or number two, to make someone or something weaker or less effective. So deprive a man of his role and to make him weaker or less effective. From the book The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong, who speaks a lot about emasculation. I want to ask Cynthia about this here in 1 second. She says the long-term effects of castration or emasculation are competing instead of cherishing your woman. So competing with her instead of feeling like you want to cherish her. He will keep distance instead of seeking intimacy. He will approach with suspicion women and his woman instead of trust. He will treat with disdain instead of respect and relate from fear instead of love. And this is her back with him as well. She'll treat him with disdain instead of respect. And they'll both relate from fear instead of love. So, Cynthia, in the book, The Queen's Code, the main reason she says that women emasculate men, either purposefully or not intentionally, is to reduce their power, reduce their, let's say, fear of a man, reduce their own anxiety, their own insecurity, and they want to reduce the potential threat, either intellectual or emotional or physical threat. So they emasculate him, which leads to all these bad things we're going to talk more about here today on this call. So talk with us about Do women in your women's circles and when you work with women, I know you work with both men and women, but when you speak with women, is this term spoken about? I actually have an excerpt from Psychology Today in a little while that I don't see this term emasculation really in psychological literature often.
Mm.
So do you see this in your circles? And are women aware that they may turn a prince into a frog, like Alison Armstrong talks about in the Queen's Code, by emasculating him? Talk with us about that to start us off.
Yeah, so I would say there's almost like two sides of the coin. I would say in a lot of women's circles, there's a lot of women who've experienced the disempowerment of their feminine energy. So their concept, their idea of regaining power in self is to regain power over. And so I I see women almost numbed out to the understanding that they're trying to take power away from other in order to feel empowered themselves in their own being and their own femininity. Uh, and a lot of women, I think, try to adopt a lot of masculine traits to feel more empowered. And that word compete that you put in that list is so huge because a cornerstone, I think, behind her mass emasculation behaviors, thought processes, trying to almost take away from you is this idea of competing, and that she must have won over in order to survive a certain softer side of herself. And it comes out in really incredibly painful ways, and a lot of it's tucked into this current vernacular about women working on themselves and being powerful in the world, and maybe not so much the like, yes, we have the girl boss phrase, but women who do a lot of self work, there's a lot of phrases that are hiding some of these belief systems as well.
Thank you. And talk with us about you and I have spoken about anxiety binders within a family system. So childhood experiences, what did they experience in childhood? So what's our go-to to bind anxiety? Talk
Yeah.
with us about that.
Yeah, so the concept behind systems is that there's always going to be anxiety there. There's always going to be some level of anxiety between two people in relationship, no matter what the relationship is. That human beings are always going to have some sort of anxiety, just survival anxiety. And so there's a lot of ways to project that onto someone else, that how you're feeling is their fault. And women can get a lot of false sense of power by taking whatever is naturally anxious in the system, even maybe what she grew up with and watched in her parents' relationship, and then putting it back on you and saying, you're causing this tightness, this angst, this feeling of weak in me. And by calling it your fault, she kind of gets a relief. And again, a false sense of, I'm okay, this is okay. And as long as I'm powerful over, I don't have to just be in the experience of being a human being.
And she can be feel better about her own anxiety where maybe it's not her responsibility, not her fault. Yeah.
Yeah. We could go into how hard it is for women to feel deep senses of self responsibility. And I think there's an evolutionary reason for that, that really maybe meant her demise in the past. But let's say current life, it is so uncomfortable for her to feel self responsibility that it feels a whole much more relief to put it on someone else. And when someone else, especially a man, is shouldering your burden as a woman and making it all his problem he needs to fix to make things better, it kind of gives that woman a hall pass from feelings of self responsibility.
Thank you. So I want to ask Cynthia some more questions about this. If the men that are here live, I'd love for you to punch into the chat or raise your hand if you have. So, what situations have you seen where you're not sure if she's being disrespectful across a line? You're not sure where this boundary is for you, if it's appropriate, or maybe she's saying that it's your fault. So, I'd love for you to punch into the chat or raise your hand in Zoom and we can talk about that, or we can ask Cynthia about that. So go ahead and punch some things into the chat. Where have you been, let's say, blamed by your wife, or you feel disrespected, but it seems as though she's making it your responsibility, your fault of that's how you feel, right? I can't make you feel that way. But yeah, so let me ask, I want to jump in here. There's another YouTube channel that's gotten really popular, and I respect that. And one way this particular woman, this YouTuber, has gotten popular is saying that all modern relationships and all sort of therapy dynamics are about codependence. And every relationship, modern relationship, has all these factors of codependence. And we're supposed to be completely justified within ourselves, completely self validated, and the other person can't make you feel any kind of way. Well, if I turn and I dunk on my partner, like if we're talking about a wife maybe dunking on her husband, he's going to feel some kind of way about that. And is that a flaw of his? How do you see this idea that no one can make you feel a certain way, your partner can't make you feel a certain way? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to say like, well, in a perfect world, but I don't even think that's a perfect world. What's the point of being in relationship if it's not for getting to feel things because of another person? I think we're even wired that way on a cellular basis. That's what keeps us together as human beings, to raise, children and keep them safe, is because we can make, we can cause feelings in another. I just think now in our modern world, it gets blown way out of proportion, or the wrong proportion. And to expect anyone to not be affected by someone, especially after you've been intimate and shared energy with this other person, it's somatically impossible to not be affected, in my humble belief.
Yeah, there's research in brain scans now where being shamed by your intimate partner, the emotional pain is fires synapses just like physical pain does, just like torturous physical pain does in your body. So I always find that a bit dismissive to say, oh, well, I can't make you feel a certain way right after you dunk on the right after you basically insult the person. I can't make you feel a certain way. It's like, well, we're in relationship to go deep with one another emotionally. At least we are, and that's what we teach and what we believe in. We're in relationship to go deep sexually, to go deep into emotions, to go deep into our soul and bloom something that we couldn't alone.
Yeah.
And so, by our definition, we do affect one another and we do want to be aware and empathetic. And yeah, and we are in relationship to be with one another for what we can bring, and that 1 plus 1 equals 5, that 1 plus 1 equals a million, as we say.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. I just think it's quite cold to say that, I can't affect you and you can't affect me. That's all in your head. I don't think that's true. And the research bears out that as well. Yeah. Yeah. In the chat here, Cynthia, your honesty and vulnerability to say this is overwhelming. Thank you. Another man says, my wife blamed the reason she was going out too much on me and our marriage issues. Yeah. Another man, my wife is really good at emasculating me. We're starting the divorce process. She says that I'm the cause of taking her happiness and joy in life, and I've turned her into a monster. She said she hates me for killing who she was. She said I've never once put her needs first. What's your initial impressions there? It's all your fault. You've turned me into a monster. You did this to me. I'm a victim. I have no responsibility here. You've never done what I needed you to do. If you were in a women's circle, how might that go from there? A healthy women's circle.
Well, I guess first I'll just call out, I had such an emotional response to reading that, because there was like part of me was just crushed to no end of the pain of that. And then another part of me wanted to laugh out loud at the ludicrousness of putting that blame on someone else. So to me, it's something that feels so ludicrous has to be something that was learned very early on in a person's life. So they witnessed this in parents, or they were taught this, and that's why this feels like a reasonable thing to believe about you, about partnership. If this woman was in a healthy circle where she's looking to really grow and learn about herself, I would be asking her to feel, if she is brave enough to feel more into the part of her that feels like a monster. Uh, and the incredible pain of that, of her to feel like there's something so unhappy, so misaligned, so wrong, so bad, that she would believe this part of herself to be ill and not good. Because behind the blaming you and saying it's your fault is a true feeling that part of her is that awful and bad and should be destroyed. So you could see how one might want to destroy the other, destroy you, versus feeling their own pain of wanting to self-destruct that part of herself.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Some more in the chat. I always felt like I was just a problem in her life, a necessary evil sperm donor that she tolerated. I recognize that her childhood probably resulted in a certain, what's that word? Acerbic? I don't know that word. Acerbic attitude towards men in general. But man, did it suck being the brunt of that and incredibly emasculating. Yeah. Another man, my wife turned me into a monster. My responsibility, but it's when she criticizes and accuses me, Mr. Hyde comes out, and that's why I'm getting help. I want to stay Dr. Jekyll. So yeah, talk with us about that. I mean, you just said she turned me into a monster, and we were just talking about that sort of feeling that you've become a monster in parts of yourself. Talk with us about that. Yeah.
How do I come out without not sounding like some sort of asswipe? You know, my whole extended family, they always, you know, I was always a nice guy. And so the long story, I mean, I saw my mom disrespect my dad, and I was like, I'm never letting anybody do that. And then, you know, I got my girlfriend pregnant, who I'm married to now for 29 years. And, you know, that when it started, I just kind of took it for a while. And then she got mad at me for not dialoguing about it. And so I'm like, well, I mean, I got to be honest. So my honesty came out, and I'm like, well, I think this or that. And that's when all hell broke loose in our relationship. And it's been like that ever since. And we were just talking about it this morning, just before I got on. I'd almost forgotten the meeting. You know, it ended on a good note, and she actually remained calm, and which is unusual. Usually she starts yelling and screaming and slamming things. And um, I'm the calm one that wants to, and that drives her crazy too when I'm calm. So when she started doing that, I saw a side of me that I'd never seen before. And whenever she does that and I can't handle the criticism any longer, or the accusations, like I said, my bucket gets full now, because I realized that I could handle it for so long, and then the floodgates would open up and I would start coming back at her as Mr. Hyde. And we do joke about it when we're getting along. And I've told her, I said, I don't like that side of me. I don't, and I've told her, I said, I feel like, you know, you're part of that. I can't deny that I'm responsible for my reactions. But at the same time, just like you said, I mean, people can make your life miserable. Because you know, people say, well, you can control your own feelings and stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, if you want to stay away from those people, but you're going to respond to those people who do that. And honestly, I want to stay married, and you know, I enjoy, when we get along, I mean, we really get along. And that's what's kept us together so long, not to mention the kids and stuff. But it's I would like to see Mr. Hyde go away. And I've seen that in a lot of your videos in the past, Jeff, and I've watched a lot of the archive on Great Good Guys Are Great Men. And it sounds like a lot of guys that have been successful in this process have gathered themselves to be better responders and to know their value. And that's just where I want to get. And my wife's watched Cynthia's some of her videos and with you together, and she just thinks that Cynthia's wonderful. And just saying that gave me a reminder of what Jordan Peterson had said about when he's counseled high level women compared to high level men, and that men seek to comply and try to get things done, where he's seen him have to try to when he's talked to high powered women, they think that power means control over others. And he said, you see that with men, but you see that almost across the board with women. When they get to a level of senior partner in a law firm or a Fortune 100, Fortune 500 company, there's a level of control that he's seen in those women trying to control things that really in the end drives them insane and gets them to make bad decisions when otherwise they're perfectly capable in the position.
Let me jump in right there.
Sure.
So I want to ask Cynthia about what you just said, and a couple of things off the bat. I don't know which women he was necessarily talking about, and of course, disclaimer, right? Guys can be assholes too, right? And all that stuff too.
Absolutely.
But no,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to thank you, and I want to ask Cynthia about that point of fearful. Well, I'm not a woman. I don't know what it's like to be a young woman. I don't know what it's like to be afraid quite often for your physical self, which we've studied within our private groups and in our coaching and things, and talked about how women feel afraid for their physical self a lot of the time, where a man can't necessarily relate to that. So with all of that said, what would be helpful for us to know about when a woman becomes high powered, it feels more like she needs to control? What is there for us to learn about that spot?
Yeah, so I will preface that this isn't like an answer to it, but there's not a whole lot currently in the world that women can look around and see how what we might attribute to more feminine skills, even feminine styles of communication, feeling, leading. There's not a whole lot painting that as powerful. And so I see women emulating more masculine energy to be powerful, or to feel like their power is not being taken away, because maybe their voice wasn't heard before, their emotion wasn't heard before. And I don't want to say that to sound like trite, but it's kind of like coming to play at the table. And if everyone's holding hearts in their hands, like she wants to come bringing the cards that's going to be able to play with the poker game. And unfortunately, men, you who do this kind of work, exude a kind of masculinity that is so broad and honorable and golden and enormous, an ability to hold an enormous amount of space while also moving things forward, that when women try to do the same thing, it's just they don't have the same kind of ability. And so when they try to be more masculine, it comes out in really painful ways to witness, because what they really need to do is find more authentic to themselves, their own empowerment of who they are as women, because that's equally amazing and energetic and can move mountains.
Well, yeah, and so, absolutely. Thank you. And so this is part of what we are here to teach, and for you to model, and for us that we personally build in relationship and teach professionally, is that femininity, deep, open femininity, has value. And so does sacred masculinity. So divine femininity and sacred masculinity can each both be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Like either purposefully or accidentally. Most of the time it's not malicious. Most of the time that we see it's sort of accidental. Where you were saying Mr. Hyde, and the way I talk about this is I didn't know what I hadn't declared my values. I didn't really know what boundaries meant in the past. I didn't know when I should speak up for myself. So I just kind of felt like in the distant past now that I was a punching bag, And so I went farther and farther past what felt good to me, like, oh, this isn't such a big deal, or oh, I'm going to let it slide. And when we're way past what we feel is appropriate, then often we either collapse or we explode. And that's the Mr. Hyde part. Like, all right, I've way fucking had enough. So now I'm getting angry because I felt attacked or because I felt disrespected or this has gone way too far. So I don't know what to do and I get angry. And then now we're in a fight and now we're like measuring dicks and that's not going to go anywhere good. So what we are teaching and what we believe in fully is the divine feminine and the sacred masculine are what we're both trying to bring into the relationship, but we're not going to be taken advantage of. And we know when to speak up in a healthy, calm way, which is usually much earlier than our default setting. Usually our default setting as nice men is to try to not rock the boat. Hence at the beginning, right? Happy wife, happy life. As long as she's happy, everything's good and all that shit. And that doesn't work. That diminishes her attraction for us and we start to grow resentful. And I want to tip my hat to something here. So again, it was not easy for me to find psychological literature around this concept of emasculation. And I won't get on a soapbox here. I have a whole thought about the American Psychological Association and the APA's view on masculinity and all of that. But I just want to read one quick excerpt that I found. This is by a PhD psychologist, a man. And I'm really going to keep this short because this upsets me. So I'm going to just read this and we'll keep going. So it's entitled Men's Fears of Being Dominated and Controlled by Women. And this is just a one excerpt from the article. He says, the parent-child relationship. So that's what this is about, is when a relationship devolves into a parent-child type of dynamic. You may have noticed how much the dynamic in Tom and Nancy's relationship, which was the example from the article, resemble those between a parent and a child, with one partner being the adult who takes responsibility for everything, and the other partner playing the role of the passive-aggressive, acting out child. This pattern is so common that couples therapists refer to it as a parent-child marriage. In heterosexual relationships, it's most often the man who ends up in the role of the child. Okay, it doesn't say why, it doesn't say how to fix it in this article. It just basically, I'll just keep going. While men joke about wanting to live the bachelor life and resenting having a woman trying to socialize them, there's a whole bunch wrong with that sentence already, in my opinion. On some level, they, men, appreciate the changes that a woman brings into their life. It feels good to live someplace that feels more like the home they grew up in, to have a more regular life that they can count on and relax into, to have a reliable social life that is taken care of for them, and to have some guidance to soothe their anxiety about not knowing what to wear or how to act in more grown-up social situations. Okay, this is a PhD basically dunking on men that we need a woman to dictate our social life for us. We don't know what to wear and we don't know how to act in grown-up social situations, or at least the man that falls into a parent-child relationship. So I won't go off on this. It's a whole other topic for another time. You men, we are here to take responsibility for our own selves. You're not watching this because you want your wife to just do everything for you. You're watching this because you take responsibility. You want to have masculine frame. You want to offer her emotional safety, and you want to lead within intimacy. You want to lead in the bedroom within intimacy, and you want to cultivate her divine feminine and your sacred masculine. That's what we're here for. So the digging in the first article I found written by a man is still posing men as the child in these types of situations, and I find that like emasculating. Let's put it that way. A couple of situations from Cora real quick, and then we'll step forward. So this was, what are the most common things a woman does to emasculate her husband? And I'll do these quickly. This person says it's all about the power trip and the glee of the power trip they feel putting the man down. It's basically what this whole piece is about. Here's another one that says, a man needs many things from a woman, but there is one thing he needs more from her than all other things combined. And without this, she could provide all other things, including sex, at max capacity, and he will still be running on fumes. Because this one thing is what puts wind in his sails. He can get it from other people, even other women, but he knows that those are a flash in the pan. Only getting this from his wife actually matters, this person says. In a nutshell, this is admiration. Respect joins the other elements by which themselves are not enough. Admiration is active. So admiration as a verb, as something that, she does with him in relationship. And this puts wind in his sails. In the wake of admiration comes respect, and with that, loyalty and praise in no particular order. Without respect, there can be no loyalty or praise, so it has to come first. So if a man feels respected, then he feels there's admiration happening, then he's wanting to provide, then he's wanting to praise, then he's wanting to be loyal and bloom something with her. But if the admiration isn't there, then a man can feel like he is dying on the vine. So in again, in women's circles and what you're seeing as a professional in this field, certainly for a long time, what is the idea of admiration? How does that play as a counterpoint to this topic today in particular?
I think what can be confusing for women is so often they're only wearing the glasses of their own reality and how their brain works. And so for women, the tool of admiration can be used amongst others of other women as a way to even you can use admiration even to like cut a woman down or feel like you have power over her. It's you say one thing and mean another. And so I think there needs to be a education, a leadership that, women who've done a lot of this work are aware of, that admiration is not a tool for good or bad, that offering that to the masculine is not a tenuous, like, what is he going to do with this? It's this is the gold in return to the gold that you give, the honor that you have, the forest that you hold up. uh it's not a way to feel less than or more than, and it's actually an exponential energy that is a way for the feminine to bloom open. And I not a lot of women know that, and so getting to learn that for them would be one of the greatest softening and uncurling the hand around the parts of themselves that they're holding so tight, believing this is the only way they can stay safe or grounded or unpersuaded.
That's really interesting. So say more about that admiration can be used as a slight from woman to woman. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
So say more about that and why then then a woman would be hesitant to use that judiciously with her man?
And might assume that man, the masculine does the same thing. So admiration can feel like if you're giving admiration to someone, it can feel like you're laying your entire self on the table, making yourself very vulnerable to someone else. And if she hasn't experienced in the past, even with her dad or other relationships, that the grounded sacred masculine who takes that and does great things with it, uh, if she's experienced that that actually has been used to have power over her or take something away, she doesn't have a good relationship with that.
So how would you advise a man not accidentally spit in the face of that or not accidentally stomp on that? So maybe she gives admiration, then he might stack something back on top. Would that be a mistake? How could he avoid mistakes in that way?
Yeah, like the stacking as if it's kind of an opportunity, like, oh, she's finally being soft and open. Now we can finally talk about this, tough thing, or I can assert a boundary that's really needed in our relationship.
Don't do that.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I want for women when they get to receive the gift of you seeing them truly, where she like really takes in the gift of you and what you're offering in a more masculine way. I would ask, how can you receive what she's offering as a gift, that it is gold, that it is valuable, that it's as valuable as her doing certain things with the house or upkeeping the really intense job and like driving all the kids to soccer practice.
So seeing what this is more of the divine feminine when she's admiring you, And so to see that is incredibly valuable, to praise that, to notice that. And can you as a man take that in as a gift, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Anything that you would add to that in particular?
I think there's so much that can be healed and shifted in power struggles with this kind of learning to take in what someone else is giving. I mean, so much about everything about emasculation is about a power struggle, and women can say horrible, nasty things in power struggles, and yet their energy can be shifted so profoundly when they get to experience parts of themselves that have been dormant, really valued, upheld, uh, noticed, again, as important as her prowess and power. Because women are thinking that power is the name of the game, and it's crushing relationship with amazing masculine energy, and is also crushing her and her life force.
Thank you. Yeah. So what do we do if we feel she's being disrespectful? That was asked in the chat. We'll talk about that here right now as we move toward the end of this call. And we'll save this question. A man asked this question for next time. Is bringing up the past shaming? If she brings up the past, or if I bring up the past and she feels a certain way or I feel a certain way about that, is that inherently shaming? Is bring up the past shaming someone? We'll talk about that more next time. So 3 ways wives disrespect and emasculate their husbands, and I'll say what to do about it. Number 1, harshly correcting him, especially in public, minimizing his efforts and sacrifices, and nagging like a mother figure. These are surefire ways for a man to feel diminished, less than, emasculated, like she doesn't appreciate him. She doesn't have admiration for him. She doesn't allow him to be human. She's holding him up to some kind of impossible standard, and especially in front of other people. How embarrassing that is. Yeah. So what do you do about it? Quite simply, and this is going to sound very basic and simple because it is, and you should be saying this before you're getting upset. So you should be saying this when you recognize something isn't kosher. I teach the 24/7 rule, which means sleep on it for 24 hours and then bring it up within 7 days if it still needs to be brought up. Or if it's really egregious, like it happens in public, I'd be saying it as quickly as I can to her when it's not in front of other people, which is, I don't like that. I don't like the way you spoke to me just then, or I don't like such and such behavior. And that's it. I don't like fill in the blank behavior, or I don't like such and such the way you talked to me just then. And now you're not arguing about it. You're not trying to sell her on it. You're not trying to convince her to think like you. You're not trying to convince her to be like on your side in this. You're just declaring that you don't like that. And if she wants to talk about it more, I honestly suggest that you talk about it at a later time. Like, hey, I'm happy to talk about this more, but I'd like to talk about it later tonight or tomorrow. Just stating what you don't like. How does that come across? So I'm not trying to sell. I'm not trying to convince. It's just saying, hey, I don't like that.
Yeah.
How does that come across to you as a woman in this field?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to call out the dragon in the room, that you can say that, and your wife probably could be really angry about that. She could shut down completely. She could turn away. She could say, like, stop trying to control me. But if I pay attention to the energetics behind that, feeling your masculine solidness about that, and the inherent boundary it required in my solar plexus to feel your own solidity, to feel the solidness, almost as if it's like a pillar of strength that she can't help but feel is going to shift dynamics. And again, she might have a lot of ways of reacting to that, but she cannot deny that kind of solid, grounded claiming of what is not okay for you, but really what's not okay for the health of your relationship. Never mind anyone else who might be like kiddos who are watching any sort of dynamic.
Yeah, that's very well said. What we teach in our private coaching and our one-on-one coaching and in our groups is growing your own sense of frame, confidence, clarity about yourself, who you are, how to bring emotional safety to your own self and to her, and how to lead in intimacy. And part of that leading in intimacy is, like we've been speaking about, that you believe that you want to cultivate your sacred masculine, her divine feminine, so you can have deeper sex and more soul connection in the relationship. That's what we're here to do. So we're out of time for today. We will see you guys next week. Appreciate you being here live. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
See you guys next time.